I was 19 years old when I first went to Manila. Now, in hindsight, only with hindsight do I realize how lucky I was to be there at that time in the late 90s and at such a young age. But my girlfriend from Vancouver, she was in Canada. She had immigrated there by herself. She was from the suburb of Manila called Caloocan. Now, it looks like it's called Caloocan, okay? But if you say it that way, the people laugh at you. So it's pronounced Caloocan. So we arrived at the airport during the day, and her family picked us up at the airport. So the family had a car. It looked like a mini style jeepney. I mean, you had the driver in front, and then you had those two benches going parallel to each other in the back. And her whole family was there. The kids, probably 10 people. Anyway, this was their own family private car, right? So we drove home from the airport, and it was a whole nother world. Now, at this time, it was the first time I'd ever been outside of any Western location. And I gotta say, like, my initial thought on the drive home was actually, yes, this is for me. The first impression was the Wild West. I mean, there were literally donkeys on the road, okay? Now, this is for me, man. I am a Wild West kind of dude, you know? I mean, this was for me. I felt like I was taken back in time. You know, it's amazing how vivid a memory can be from 23 years ago. And I still remember that drive, that very first drive from the airport to their house. So anyway, you know, we get back to their house. We arrive at their home, and the house was, you know, it was fine. I really thought nothing of it. Now, it was a home. Now, the home was, you know, like if this home were in the West, it would have been something you would have seen maybe 70 years ago, 80 years ago, 90 years ago. Okay, it was old. It was, you know, it was put together, but it was a home. It was a home. It was professionally built, and it was their home. So here I am now in the barangay. We arrived there with the whole family. So there was a lot to get used to here. First was the heat. There was the people in the house. It was the barangay style area that these barangay style, I mean, they don't exist in the West. And it was the people in the barangay, the everyday regular Filipino people. For example, I mean, the first morning, you know, going to get pandesal. Imagine this trip from the house to getting pandesal. For a Filipino, I mean, it would be nothing. It would be a forgotten 5 minutes. But for me, it was 5 minutes picking up pandesal, but this 5 minutes, it changed my life. I'm seeing surroundings on this first morning that are new to me. I've never seen this kind of environment before. I can't pinpoint one thing that stuck out, but it was just everything put together. It was the people looking at me. I heard guapo a number of times. When I was served the pandesal, the cashier smiled. It was the warm weather, and it was the warm hearts of the Filipino people in this barangay in Caloocan. I was liked, you know, I was popular. For the first time in my life, I had always been the person who just, you know, is off to the side prior to this, my whole life. So at this point, I had not even been to the Phils yet for 24 hours. And at this time, I already never wanted to leave. I mean, not only her family made me feel at home, but the barangay did as well. The people in the barangay, they were fantastic. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a nicer family. I couldn't have asked for nicer people around in the area. I mean, imagine this versus a gated community or an upper class condominium area. Really, the people with less money are really the happiest, most friendly people. I remember there was a guy across the street from my girlfriend's house. He walked with a limp. He had a hard time talking. I asked, what's wrong with this guy? So it turns out this guy was an OFW in Saudi Arabia. He was working on a construction site. He was hit in the head with something. So he was in the hospital, you know, yada, yada. The guy returns home with $500,000 severance. So again, this was in the late 90s, okay? So the family hired a maid from the province to take care of this guy. So this nanny ended up pregnant, okay? So she got pregnant, and then after that, they had 2 more babies. So this guy who can barely walk, and this province girl, they had 3 kids together. And then what happened? I mean, that 500,000 pesos, it just ran out. I mean, they didn't have any plan for it. Between his spending, the province girl's spending, and the family spending it, I mean, it was gone. And when the money was gone, she took off. She took off. She went back to the province. And that was my sort of very first insight into what kind of the province life is like. Now let's take a look at my girlfriend's family, okay? This fantastic family. Now in the house were her parents, the brother and his 3 kids. So in this case, the mom took off. The dad kept his 3 kids. There wasn't any court bull crap, okay? Just the mom took off and she took off. That was that. The mom would come and visit every so often, maybe once a year or so. But the mom, she got another guy and she had, a baby or 2 with the other guy. So there was the brother's wife and his 2 kids. And this brother with the wife, the brother was in Saudi Arabia. He was an OFW there. He was making pies or designing cakes. He was an artist. So it was just there at the house was his wife and their 2 kids. There was the bedridden elder brother. Okay, there was the sister, her hubby, and they had a daughter. I mean, this was a full house. This family was interesting for one single reason, and I'll tell you. They taught me what a family is really supposed to be. Everyone lives together in one house. They work to help each other. Like the mom is basically the manager of the house. She makes sure that all the bills are paid. She is really the most responsible one. So there's, many people in the family. Some contribute more and some contribute less, and more or less at different times in their lives. But even those who contribute less, they will do whatever it takes when the time comes, if there's some opportunity. For example, one of the ones who contributed less, he was the brother there with the 3 kids. So, but later, this guy came to Korea. He was an OFW in Korea, where I live, where I've been for 20 years. So he was here for about 5 years, and I met him. I did meet him a few times. And he was in good spirits here. It was interesting to see life of an OFW as he showed me his place where he lived. So it was a small 1-room, like 3 people slept in one single room. They separated the space with like makeshift walls, kind of like shelving. They did whatever they could to sort of put separation between the beds. Their bathroom was outside. Now, for the OFW, it's all about saving money, right? That the happiness and convenience, it means nothing to them. They work as many shifts as they can get, and all they think about is what's being sent to the fills. And from talking to them, they didn't really seem concerned about sort of managing the money, having a future plan. It was just all about now. They sent money home now. There was some need for the money now. And, what I wish they would do is have some plan, like buy a plot of land so that when they return home, all the work they did while they were an OFW had some meaning to it, had some purpose. Because I met a guy in Bohol who was living in Japan. I think he was there for 9 years, as I remember. But he was there 9 years. He returns home and he just gets a part-time job, and the family basically just lived off the money that he sent for the 9 years. When he got back, there was nothing really to show for it. But was he bitter about it? Absolutely not. That's just how it rolls there. So anyway, this particular brother in Korea that I'm talking about, he had married. So this particular brother had married, okay. He had a baby with a girl that he was dating while I was there. Okay, so this particular brother, the brother I'm talking about who later came to Korea, he married. He did get married prior to coming to Korea, and he married a girl that he was dating while I was there. So I was there in the late 90s. He was dating some girl. Okay, he ended up getting married to that girl, and they had a kid together. So I met his wife, and we even visited her mom and the home she grew up in Batangas. So these two met while she worked on a cruise ship. She was working on the cruise ship, and his cousin, the brother's cousin, worked on this cruise ship, and he went to visit the cousin one day, and he met her. Okay, that's how the love blossomed. That's where the spark was. So I remember that this brother had no money because he wasn't working while I was there. And at this time, the cell phone providers, they provided a particular service where any call under 10 seconds is free. So he would call her, and every 9 seconds, he would hang up and call her back for nine more seconds. Anyway, these two, they got married later on, and she moved into his house before he came to Korea. And so they had their own space in that house and they lived there. They live there to this day. So that guy, this brother, after returning home, he was made actually the barangay captain. So that kept him employed for a while. And now he does something else in the local government there. I'm not exactly sure what he does, but that's basically the story of one of her brothers. One interesting thing with this brother's wife from Batangas, one interesting thing with her is that I saw her on Facebook and she had a picture of herself 20 years ago. Now, this is about the time when I was there. And the weird thing is I'm looking at this picture and it's like, I see that girl that I knew, whatever it looked like the picture was taken in the 80s or the 70s. You know, I look at the pic and I think, wow, you know, I still remember vividly the times that I had spent with them in Manila all this time ago. So the sister's story is kind of a typical story. She was in college and she had met a guy at college. She got pregnant, and by the third year of chiropractic college, she drops out of college. Of course, the family totally supported her. It was not a good thing that she dropped out of college, but it was kind of also a non-issue. The family, they're going to take care of each other no matter what. So the guy who got her prego he was a decent guy, although he came from a poor family and himself did not finish college. So the guy came from the province in Tagaytay. So the guy also, he moved into the house too. So the three of them shared a bedroom in their own house. Now, this kind of everyone moving into one house, it wouldn't fly in my family. It wouldn't fly in most Western people's families. It would, you're on your own kind of thing. But in the Phils, they wouldn't have it any other way. Now, that guy today, the guy she married, he works for the electric company as a manager. His job for the electric company while I was there was to turn off the electricity of people who had not paid. Now, I still remember him when he first started, his very first day on the job. I still remember him. But he had the power to turn off our electricity in the house, like the connection, the grid. The electricity would still work. We just wouldn't have to pay for it. I don't know how he did it. He just unscrewed this or that. Anyway, we could. He would do this at nighttime, so we could run the aircon all night, but without paying. So that was pretty cool. So the brother in Saudi, I thought this was kind of a sad situation. Now they married. They had 2 kids, a boy and a girl. The dad was never there, as he had to put the kids through private school. That was his main thing. He wanted his kids to get a good education. So they could only put the kids through private school if he worked in Saudi. So he did. The kids, they went through private school, and the eldest was a girl. Okay, now I felt that she really had no male fatherly figure in her life. She really looked up to me while I was staying there. And she always wanted to hold my hand while I was there. She was kind of in grade 3, grade 4, something like that. I felt like she really admired me as sort of a father figure. But that admiration, it was really in placement of her missing father. As I heard, she cried when the girlfriend and I went back to Vancouver. But her and I, we didn't really talk. She just sort of sat next to me if I was watching TV. I mean, if my girlfriend and I went out, she wanted to go with us. So an update on this girl. She met a boyfriend in college, okay? And I kind of, this was kind of spelled out. It was sort of in the works. You kind of just knew this kind of thing was going to happen. Anyway, her grades started to slip. She took a break from college and she never went back. She gets pregnant and the guy who she was in love with took off. She went back to college. She got a software engineering degree, which was what she started with before she dropped out. And today, she's working in Japan as an engineer. Her child is being raised by her mom, who now doesn't work, and also the father is also back. So the mom and dad are finally back together, but now she's gone. It was kind of known or assumed that her mom, who was married to the guy in Saudi, sorry to use a lot of, different characters here, but it was kind of assumed that she was cheating on the dad, unfortunately. I mean, look, the woman, the husband's gone basically for 20 years, right? She's looking for love wherever she can get it, I guess. But she worked in Makati and blamed sort of the transportation as the reason why she didn't come home very much. But she said she was staying with a coworker. Now, she may have been true. I mean, this may have been true. I mean, there's no proof that she was cheating. It was just sort of the chismis in the house, sort of behind her back. But that was that. That was that. It's interesting. Now, today, it was the daughter who he was raising, putting through school. He spent his life as an OFW to put his daughter through school. Now the daughter herself is an OFW taking care of them. It's just kind of, it's just like, wow, this kind of life, this really makes you think, how lucky other people are in the West. So one of the brothers was bedridden because he had diabetes. Anyway, this guy, he was the breadwinner for the family, being bedridden. He had two jobs. He was a professor at a university, I think part-time, and he also worked at the city hall. But he had one vice, and he had only one vice. He drank Coca-Cola all day. So anyway, it ended up, I don't know how long he was doing this before he got diabetes. So he gets diabetes and he loses the vision. He becomes blind, okay? So he had to stop his jobs. He got I think a small pension. So his girlfriend at the time, as he was going blind, said that she will stay with him. She will stay with him through thick and thin. Now, the brother, he was a hell of a nice guy. Now, he knew his fate. He knew there was no going back to the normal life, and he didn't want to drag her down. So he basically, told her to go, find a guy who can see, find a better guy, whatever. Anyway, so I talked to the brother a lot, and the guy had quite a life. He was motivated, he was smart, he had everything going for him. And then he went blind. When I was there, he was blind, he was bedridden. He had one leg cut off, and it was cut off while I was there. We visited him in the hospital the day his leg got cut off. He had gangrene in his leg on top of being blind. So now he has no leg, and it was cut off around the knee. And he was blind, right? So, and through all this, the only reason he was depressed was that he couldn't help his family. And later he died. I'm not sure how he died, but he couldn't breathe. He was in the hospital for something, and for some reason he stopped breathing, and he died. Later on, the dad died. And the dad was also an OFW. He was a fireman in Saudi Arabia. And his goal, being a fireman in Saudi, was to put his kids through university. And then later, the mom died too. So today, it's kind of like as people died, new people arrived, the new kids, the new in-laws, the new family came in. But basically, it's still one family. And as I've heard, the house today has completely deteriorated. But together, they will hold it together. Walking around outside in Canada, it was never exciting. It was boring. Now, when I arrived in Phil's, I first walked outside. Now, this is in the suburbs of Manila during the daytime, just regular walking around. Going here, going there, But for the first time in my life, just walking around, minding my own business was actually very exciting. I just love the busyness of Caloocan. It was busy and it was chaotic and it had a different smell in the air. The smell was kind of like a mix between pollution and humidity and just, I hate to say, Asia in general. Sometimes in Korea, if it's summer and it's just finishing and it just finished raining, I can still get that same smell, and it always reminds me of that first trip in Manila. It just sort of sparks something in my brain, brings me back in time. So there were three kinds of going outside, okay? The first was with my girlfriend. We would hold hands and walk, wherever we were going. And, we were in the taxi and the taxi guy was asking about this, this foreign guy. And, this was the late 90s, right? It wouldn't happen today. But, the girls were staring at me even though I was holding my girlfriend's hand. And one time when my girlfriend and I were in the cinema and we had just finished the movie. And we came out, she went to the bathroom and I was waiting outside about 30 feet away from the bathroom area. And she came out of the bathroom and instantly, held my hand and we walked outside the cinema into the mall. She told me what happened inside the bathroom. Some girls were in there and they were saying that there was a putti outside. Okay, putti, like some foreign dude. And I was shocked to hear this. And I got to thinking, I got to admit, damn, imagine if I was here without my GF, bad way to think. I know, but hey, I was a young dude, man. But I mean, it was the first time that kind of like the devil entered my mind, you know. But this event, this one event in the cinema, that did assist. It did assist in hooking me into the Philippines and wanting to go back after we had left. It was this incident that stayed in my mind. I mean, hey, this was Manila. Again, I hate to repeat myself, late 90s, okay? Different, probably different than today, okay? That incident, I'm not sure if that would happen today. There was another kind of going outside. It was when I was with the brother, and he and I, what we'd probably do is we'd go to the horse racing Carinderia. And so we're there at the horse racing Carinderia, and I would get hit on by the waitresses, and I think I mentioned this in a previous vid, but just hate to repeat myself, but one thing I distinctly remember in the bar was that we always went there on a regular basis. We wanted to gamble on the horse racing. But what would happen is these waitresses would tell their friends and their cousins and whoever that were there. And so when the brother and I went back to the bar, these waitresses would message their friends, their whoever. And, you know, half an hour after being in the bar, who would show up? Who would sit down at the table next to us? You know, the waitress would ask, these are my cousins. What do you think of them? Aren't they beautiful? This kind of thing. And that was one thing I remember. And I got to admit, that stuck in my mind too when it came to getting hooked on the fills. Hey, I was a young buccaneer. I wouldn't think that way today. But the third kind of going outside was just when I was by myself, and I loved it. It was the highlight of my trip. I would just walk around the streets in the barangay by myself. And I loved it. I can't say anything exciting happened, but I felt like a movie star. I felt like important. And you got to understand, this is coming from a kid who had low self-esteem at home. It's coming from a kid who never had many friends, was never admired by anyone. I was sort of the guy on the side. I was the guy who was not picked in gym class. So it didn't take much for me to, develop this wow image and like feeling pretty good. I'm feeling pretty good about myself. I got to admit, of course, it was temporary because, it was temporary. We were going back home. There wasn't an opportunity at the time in this early internet stage to really stay there. But yeah, there's more to come on future vids in regard to me and my arriving, my first trip into Manila. So I'm going to divulge more in future vids. This vid may be a bit too long if I'm going to get into all the details in one vid. Okay, so guys, please subscribe if this kind of content is, if you're down with this kind of content. But it's really a wide topic. I mean, so many things happened on my first trip to the Phils. So I really like to, sink my teeth into some specific events that happen. And so I'm going to be doing that in future vids. But until that time, I do hope you guys the very best of days. Please, if you get one thing out of this vid, I hope it's this, okay? I hope it's this. A day, it's only 24 hours, and not to get philosophical here, okay? Listen, most of these days, they will be forgotten, okay? But we never know which day we wake up, and it's going to be the day that lives on in infamy throughout our lives. For me, one of these days was the day I arrived in Manila. I still remember that trip from the airport to her house. Like it was yesterday, I still remember it. But you're going to have your days. You're going to have your heydays that passed, and they're going to live on in infamy in your life. You're going to remember them when you're an old man who can't even walk. You're still going to remember these heydays. But, as someone who really almost, it's painful that I can't go back in life. I really would love to go back in life and experience this all over again, but I can't, and it's kind of painful. So the way I see it is, I'm going to be 60 years old one day. I'm going to be 70 years old, 80, and then I'm going to look back on my life between today and when I'm actually 80. And I'm going to think, wow, little did I know. My best days were actually ahead of me at 44. So that's how I get past this painful feeling of not being able to go back to being 19 years old again. But anyway, that said, guys, I don't want to bore you to death. Take care, my good friends, and I am going to see you on the very next vid, guys. Please take care, and adios, my great friends.